Hi guys, Selena Morgan here, naturopath, nutritionist and herbalist living deep in nature here at Ysbryd y Coed, and today I've brought you inside to our cabin where we live because I'm making an immune boosting glycerite. I'm starting to make some of the individual ingredients and I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to show you how to make a glycerite and to talk about the berries I'm using. So the reason I'm doing this inside is because it's forecast to chuck it down, but luckily at the moment it's not actually wet. So I've just collected these. Now berries hold a lot of water, so it's better in some respects if you can not collect them in the rain and maybe not had rain the day before. So yesterday, we've had loads of rain this week, but actually yesterday was dry. So this morning I went out to collect these. So I've already put the blackberries in a jar and I'm gonna start to get the berries off the elderberry stalks because you don't want the stalks in. I mean, the odd tiny bit of stalk isn't going to kill anyone, but you don't want to get the stalks in. You want to mainly have the berries. And the easiest thing to do is to just get a fork and pull them off. If you've got a freezer, you can put them in the freezer and they're much easier to remove. But to be honest, I don't find them that difficult. If they're nice and ripe, you can see they just want to fall off. They just want to be made into medicine. And today we are going to be making a glycerite. So I'm going to do these and hopefully you can hear me over the dropping of the berry sound. So here I've got my organic vegetable glycerin. And what is glycerin? Well, glycerin is 3 parts fatty acids and 1 part alcohol. So there's still alcohol in it, but lots of people use it for alcohol-free tinctures. But the molecular structure means that it's 3 parts fatty acid, 1 part alcohol. And I tend to always get organic, always food grade, because it is a byproduct of a lot of industrial processes like biodiesel, for instance, soap making. So you want to make sure it's food grade. But I always buy organic, and the reason for that is it's made from different plants. That's why it's called vegetable glycerin. And because it's made from different plants, it can be made from things such as soy or rapeseed, which we call here in the UK. I believe in America it's called more canola oil. And those can be heavily sprayed. So I buy organic for that reason. And here in the UK, the organic is a lot more expensive, but it still works out about the same price I pay for alcohol. So I'm willing to put that, if I'm making medicine, I want to start with pure products. So I'm starting with the berries from my land, and you can collect them in the wild really easily at this time of year. We're in September at the moment, and it's berry season before we go into root season and bark season. So you can collect them. And what you want to do when you're doing the elderberries, so what I'm doing, I'm just pulling them all off. It's every so often just have a look in because some of the stalks will drop. As I said, you're never going to get them all, but you want to try and get as little as possible. So the one reason to use glycerin is because it's very sweet. So lots of people make syrups, don't they, at this time of year from elderberries, but you might not be able to tolerate the sugar or you might not want the sugar. And it means that you can use the elderberries without cooking them. And some people getting a bit of a hoo-ha about consuming berries that aren't cooked. It's very different when you turn them into a glycerite or you turn them into an alcohol tincture. So it's sweet and that makes it easier for people to consume. If you make the medicine easier to consume, people are more likely to have it to eat. Oh, there's a little spider here. Let me just try and get the spider on my hand. Oop. And I will leave him wander where he wants to wander. When you're doing this kind of work, you always end up with insects in your house. And that's why I do it a lot outside. But what I tend to do is I collect whatever I'm collecting. I'll leave it out by the door under cover for about half hour just to allow the creepy crawlies to walk away. But let's be fair, there's always a level of insect contamination possible. And, there's regulations that actually allow a certain amount in our food because you're eating from nature. It's how the gorillas get their vitamin B12, and maybe it's part of the reason that we can have B12 in us as well. So if you're plant-based, you're going to be consuming an insect at some point, let me tell you. If you're not a gardener, I can tell you were going to be consuming them. So anyway, that's a bit off track. Let's get back to the medicine making. So glycerin we're using because it's sweet. It also really draws out the aromatic qualities. The difference when I've experimented between making a glycerite, which I'll explain what that is, and a straight tincture with alcohol is amazing in the taste. It tastes so much more stronger. So it's obviously pulling out more of the aromatic qualities. And what I've noticed as well is that it's obviously extracting more, because if I was to fill the jar to the top with alcohol, I never get seepage. If I was to fill the top of the jar with glycerite, I'd get seepage. Whether it's a water-filled plant like elderberries or something drier like thyme, I still get seepage. So it's obviously extracting more. Now, I am researching into this to know exactly what extra it's extracting, but it's definitely extracting more of something. So what I tend to do is I make a glycerite mixture of alcohol and glycerin. So I get the best of both worlds, and the alcohol helps to preserve a bit longer. Because if you was to make with just glycerin, you'd have to be really careful of storage, and it would probably only keep for maximum 2 years. You're looking at 12 months easily, but it could possibly keep for up to 24 months if you keep it in, conditions that don't get exposed to extreme temperatures, dry, away from light, just really good conditions. But if you add alcohol to it, to the ratio that it's not going to go below 25% alcohol, which is the way we gauge alcohol in the UK. So 25% alcohol is the lowest alcohol you'd want it to have preservation. So that means it's 25% pure alcohol and the rest of it is water. Now, if you wanted to make it completely alcohol free, you could make it 100% with glycerin, but I always make it with alcohol because I know it's pulling out even more qualities and it preserves it even better. So you can see some of these, I'm not pulling all the berries off, and that is because some of them are a bit spent because we've had a lot of rain this week. So I'm trying to only get the ones that are looking really good. I will get a couple of green ones in because elderberries, you very rarely get a whole head that's just fully ripe. So what you find with the green ones is they don't come off as easily. So sometimes that's why I do use my hands and kind of rub them, because the green ones stay on. Whereas with the fork, you'll end up pulling it all off. So why am I particularly using elderberry and blackberry to eventually end up in my immune boosting blend? Well, elderberries are renowned, aren't they, for to take if you get unwell, and they're great to take just on the onset. Don't wait for you to get really unwell. If you like, I've got a bit of a tickly throat, or my saying is, I feel like I've got something, and you don't quite know what it is, then I would go to elderberry. And the reason that is elderberry is great at boosting the immune system and helps to kind of boost cytokine production in the body. Now, there's been a lot of hoo-ha about that, again, particularly over the COVID years. It's going to cause a cytokine storm. And that is one of the reasons why we do say to take on the onset of having an illness. But, I haven't come across many people that have had a cytokine storm from taking elderberry. But I would say that elderberry works better in the body if you take it on the onset of feeling unwell. So what are these cytokines? Well, these cytokines are kind of the easiest way, they're called glycoproteins, and they're kind of like small mini proteins. And in the immune system they work because they help the immune system communicate with each other. You might say, they boss the immune system around, but what they're basically doing is letting messages get around. There's a pathogen here, there's something that needs to be sorted out, you need to be over here, and they just allow messages to get from different immune cells. And that's really simplifying it, but we don't need to know more than that. It's just helping the immune system. So because elderberry can really help with that kind of cytokine production, then that's why elderberries are great to put in your immune boosting blend. Now you can simply just have an elderberry glycerite, or you might decide to blend things together. So elderberries are great for the onset of colds, flus, any kind of like infection. That's where elderberry really comes into its own. Elderberries got decongestant qualities, so that will help clear things out. And both of the berries really, if you've got any kind of cough, it will just help expel what needs to be expelled from the body, because mucus is basically, I always describe it as the Christmas wrapping paper for toxins. It wraps up what needs to get out of the body. So it's a good thing, but obviously it can get stuck in places, and if it gets stuck in the lungs, or even just can be uncomfortable, can't it? You know, I say when I've got a cold, I turn into a bit of a mucus monster, and that can be uncomfortable. So having things with decongestant qualities is just really going to help move it along and get it out. Because usually in the body, the problem isn't the mucus or the toxins. The problem is them getting stuck. So these berries will really help get things moving. And of course, in the blackberries, there's also a substance called tannins. I mean, there'll be tannins in these as well, I would imagine. But blackberries are renowned for the tannins in them. And that is why, you know, blackberry root is amazing for diarrhea. But there's tannins in all parts of blackberries and in a lot of the berry plants. And that can just help dry things up. So, you know, if you've got a cold, but the combination of the berries together will get things moving and dry things up, which in my opinion are great qualities to have. So both these berries boost immunity, and they're both full of antioxidants. And that colour, if you look at that colour, that tells you it's boosting with antioxidants. The colours in vegetables are generally made by antioxidants, and the new word that everyone kind of bounces around are the polyphenols, which are basically the antioxidants. And this dark purpley colour, it's not that common, is it, in nature? And it comes from anthocyanins. Now, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, because you know what I'm like with these big words. But anthocyanins are the purple coloured fruit and vegetables. And they are absolutely great because they are a kind of flavonoid. And there's been a lot of research done on them. And there's evidence coming out that they can be great for cancer, to help stop cancer growing as quickly as it could without them. And to help stop, not so much, you know, it's not stop getting cancer, but because it helps with the immune system, it's going to help the immune system spot the cancer cells. That's the easiest way of describing it. It's also great for the brain. So it's been used for brain diseases, and I believe it's been used in some research with more dementia diseases recently. But, you know, as with all of these, there's more and more research coming out. So we need to keep up to date. But if I was to say, okay, what are these anthocyanins good for? I would say cancer, brain. I would also say the heart and blood pressure. Those would be the things that I would go to. So we all want to get these purple foods in our diet. And, you know, at this time of year, if you've got a veg garden, you've probably got some beetroot in the garden, and that can be great. But if you've got an immune boosting medicine full of these amazing antioxidants, that's going to really help the immune system as well, and just help the whole body. Because don't think of the immune system in one place. The immune system is in the whole of the body. And both of these berries are what I call all the antis. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by all the antis is antimicrobial, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, all the antis. So anything you can think of with antis is generally in these berries. And that's amazing to have in your immune boosting glycerite. So what I will do is I will make what I want in my immune boosting glycerite. I will make individually in jars because I can then have I can have a bottle of Elderberry Glycerite, I can have a bottle of Blackberry Glycerite and anything else I'm making, but then I can also combine them to make blends such as the Immune Boosting blend. So I've got my blackberries here and my elderberries. I may even add some other things from my apothecary into my Immune Boosting blend, such as thyme. Thyme is great for coughs and just to get the lungs moving and to get things out. So if you've got a dry cough or even a mucousy cough, any kind of cough, I would go to thyme. Sage would be a great one. I mean, sage is renowned for the throat, isn't it? But again, anything that's got aromatic qualities is going to have antimicrobial and a lot of and generally antiviral as well. So great to put in there. Other things you might want to put in. Well, I've also got a blackcurrant glycerite, so I could put some of that in as well. So have a good think. What have you already got? But if you haven't got anything and you're watching this now, you can still catch the berries and you can get the berries in, and you could just make one. Just having elderberry glycerite is going to be immune boosting on its own. When you combine plants together, they can have a synergistic effect, and that means that they all play well together and just work well together. I know in clinical practice, I'm always amazed how sometimes I can have a very small amount of something in a blend and yet it has a massive effect. And the difference sometimes if I give a client it with and without, you really notice the difference. So I'm just going through now and getting some of the stalks, and I want to see how much I've got. If I just pop that out the way and start scooping this in, you're going to end up with berries everywhere, and you're probably going to end up with purple hands, and you'll definitely end up with purple under the nails. So all I'm simply doing for the glycerite, or if I was making a tincture, and you might have watched other videos of me making a tincture, so you've seen this, I'm just filling the jar to the top, and then you put in your menstruum. And the word menstruum just means whatever liquid you are using to extract the medicinal qualities from the plant. Right, let's pour some more of that in, and I'm probably going to have to pick a bit more. There we go. Problem when you're working with round things is they roll everywhere, don't they? But that's nature wanting to spread. There we go. So I've got about half a jar there. So I'm going to carry on getting these berries off, and then I'll show you the process of making the glycerite mixture. So we've got our 2 jars of berries, and now we need to make the glycerites. So what I do for the glycerite, I'm going to make a litre and pour it in a litre at the time. So I'm going to make 60% glycerin and 40% alcohol. So it's easy to work at a litre at the time because my brain can do that maths. So that's 600 of the glycerin, and then 400 of the alcohol, and it's 400 of 40% alcohol. So if you've got higher percentage, you just need to work that out, but you can just pour vodka or gin in, which is usually around 40%. This is slightly over, it's 43, but you know, it's not going to matter. And you can see there's a complete separation of it. So you need to stir it. And I love this part because it looks like a crystallized structure coming together. Adds to the magic, doesn't it? So just gently stirring it. It doesn't have to be, it's not going to completely dissolve. It's just to encourage them to start chatting to each other. So let's do the elderberry first. So all you're simply going to do then is pour it on. Now if you pour it gently and slowly, it allows it time to get through the air bubbles. Now, if you've watched my videos on tinctures with alcohol, you know I fill it right up to the brim, but I'm not, because it's a glycerite. And as I said, the word glycerite just means it's using your glycerin and I'm using alcohol with it as well as your menstruum, which is what you use to extract the plant qualities. And remember me saying earlier on in the video that the glycerin, every time I've used it, has pulled out more medicine. Oh, look at that. It's almost exactly. Maybe I'm going to have to put a little bit more in each just so I can use this up, because it's not worth keeping that little dribble. Yeah, it's still not to the top, so that'll be fine. There we go. Perfect. So I always leave a little bit of a gap. I mean, if people are wondering what that gap is, it's probably, I usually leave between 1/4 and 1/2 inch, but it does depend on the plant. Now, obviously a plant like thyme isn't going to extract as much, but these are berries and they are going to extract. So all I'll simply do then is put the lids on. And you want to label these before you put them on the shelf, because it might be obvious now what they are, but later on it might not be so obvious. So what's the next step? Well, these will now sit on the shelf. I will tomorrow, 24 hours later, open them, because the air bubbles would have had time to work out, does it need more glycerin then? And if it does, I will mix up some. Now, if I mix them up in the jug and I end up with too much, then I'll just put on a jar and label Glycerite mixture and put 60% glycerin, 40% alcohol, so I know, and I can use that next time. So what I will do, as I said, 24 hours later, I will just check that it hasn't dropped too much and that there's still a bit of a gap in there to allow extraction of medicinal qualities. I will also then start to make sure I monitor the time. And you don't have to worry too much, because at the end of the day, there's alcohol in this, so it's not like it's going to go off quickly. But I tend to like to leave my glycerites and my tinctures at least 4 weeks. And people will say, well, do you shake them? Well, you can, because it can be lovely shaking them and adding your energy into them. But I've got quite a large apothecary here for my clients, so I don't do that. I tend to just have them sitting somewhere. It's best if you can put it away from sunlight and just keeping an eye on them, because if you want to know if it's seeping out of the jar, because you want to be able to clean up that mess. It doesn't extract that much, because let's be fair, if it was extracting loads of liquid, I'd have to be really concerned, because it would be diluting my alcohol. So I always monitor how much liquid I put in and how much liquid I get out. I write it in my little tincture book. And I've monitored the difference between tinctures and glycerite, so I do know that you do get a bit more liquid with the glycerite. But I know, because I know lots of people say about making fresh plants that it extracts too much liquid and it's going to dilute it. That's not the case. So after the 4 weeks, what do I then do? Well, after the 4 weeks, I will simply get a bowl with a nut milk bag or some muslin. I'd pour it in so you'd separate the berries and the liquid, squeeze it to get every last bit of medicine out, and then I will bottle it into amber bottles. So that's just the dark coloured bottles. And then I'll store it somewhere out of light. I mean, it's not so much of an issue if it's an amber bottle. If you haven't got amber bottles, you can have a jar and put a black sock on it. It's a good way of stopping the light getting in. And that will keep for years. I mean, generally they say 5 years, don't they, for a tincture? But, you know, if it's got alcohol in it, how often have you opened a bottle of wine and thought, oh, that smells off? It just doesn't happen, does it? So I pretty much know that these are good, but I know that they'll be used up way before 5 years, so I haven't even got to worry about that. And then if you've got a jar of your blackberries and a jar of your elderberries, you might explore making mixtures. But I always say, get to know the plants on an individual level. Because let's be fair, if you went to a cafe and you suddenly met 10 new people, you wouldn't be able to get to know any of them on a good level. You wouldn't be able to really get to know them, really get to know what they like, what they don't like, that kind of thing. You might know them a bit, but if you just met one new person, you could really get to know that person, and the plants are the same. So I always recommend getting to know them on an individual level. How do they feel in the body before you start mixing them? But how easy is that? You can make your own glycerites. And the advantage of the glycerites are they taste sweet, so you don't have to make your elderberry syrups, and there's no actual sugar in them because glycerin is 3 parts fatty acid and 1 part alcohol. So I hope that's really inspired you to get out there in berry season and make immune boosting glycerites. And if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really helps me because my mission is to get this out there so everyone can be making their own medicine, to reduce medicine miles. We can make medicine from our lands. And if you want to connect more, you can head on over to my website, selinawalker.earth. Check out what courses I've got in person and online, and sign up for my free newsletter, and I'll send you hints and tips on how you can create a healthy body, a healthy mind and a healthy planet. I'll see you guys soon.